Hey y'all, so now we're going to talk about automations in Layer. Every automation in Layer has two sides, the when side, like what causes it to run, and the what side, what it actually does once it fires. This episode's entirely about the when side, triggers. Automation triggers, there are 6 of them, and picking the right one determines whether your automation runs at the right time when you need it to, on the right fields or elements without surprising you. Let's go through all of them. If you haven't done so already, come up here to the Automations tab, and let's get started by creating an automation. What you're met with when pressing Create an Automation button is this right-hand properties pane opens up. You can begin by adding an automation name. In this case, we're just using this to learn. We'll take a look at each of the triggers available to us to initiate automations. These include when an element is created, when an element matches a filter, when an element in a category is updated, when an element is updated, when triggered manually, and at scheduled time. Now let's look at the first trigger. When an element is created, it fires whenever a new element is added to the category you specify. The moment it lands in Layer, the automation runs in the background. So in any category, when a new element is created, the trigger is set. The trigger then runs the defined action. For an instance, if you were to go to your room data sheets and create a new room data sheet, the second this is created, whatever action follows this trigger, the trigger initiates and the following action takes place. Let's go back to our automations, create an automation. And let's take a look at when an element matches a filter. Now this is referencing when a specific category, let's say finishes, contains a filter where, say, manufacturer contains and select Hayworth, null, OFS. When in the finishes category, a new element is either modified or added to match this filter criteria, manufacturer contains, Hayworth, null, or OFS, then a subsequent action will unfold. Now, an example of this type of action might be sending an email to notify someone who is supposed to be reviewing these specific manufacturer materials. To set up a view dependent on this filter, you could come to something like your finishes category, come to finishes, go to all finishes, duplicate this view because we want to filter this down, go to view settings, modify the name to match the filter criteria that we created the trigger for, come down to filter where our manufacturer contains Hayworth, null, or OFS. Now we'll create this view filtered specifically for matching the trigger, such that any new element, all finishes that matches either one of those will be shown in Hayworth, null, OFS. Now to show that this filter is actually working in this view, let's change this to a different company, XYZ. Now you see it's immediately filtered out. Null, we will link this instead to Denise Brown. That has been filtered out. We'll go to OFS, we'll change this to Apple, and that has been filtered out. We'll go back to our all finishes category and notice that it's not that the items have disappeared, but that the views have been filtered in this specific view to watch for the materials based on the manufacturer that are filtered specifically for the filter we set up. I do want to note that there is a behavior here that really matters. It's not retroactive. So because I have all of these items already matching the filter criteria of the trigger that we just set up, these items will not trigger the automation. So you won't get, or whoever set to review this will not get 3, 6, 7 emails. This only happens once the trigger automation series has been set to watch this criteria. When a new element matches, then the automation will trigger. Now, I won't go as in depth with the remaining triggers here. I just wanted to go in depth with this one to let you know that beyond the trigger happening, there's an amazing amount of leverage we get with automations, and that's coming up in the next video. Just check out when an element in a category is updated, this watches an entire category. Anytime any element in any category is edited, this fires. It's the most commonly used trigger on projects, and its most event-driven automations are watching a category for a specific change. What keeps this from being a super noisy trigger is the field filter. You can tell the trigger only fire when one or more specific fields change on an element. So instead of reacting to every edit across every element, you fire only when, for instance, survey status is updated, or when a finish field changes, or when a cost field crosses a certain threshold that you set via a formula. That's your sort of noise control, or how you control when an automation fires based on this trigger. Now, next is when an element is updated. Now, this looks for a specific element within your project. You get a dialog box here to select a specific element, or you could also search based on any category. Now, beyond this, if fields are selected, only updates to the value in those fields will actually fire this trigger. So there's a critical distinction to make between the two. If you're watching changes happen across your whole category or dataset, use the element in category is updated. If you're just watching for one particular element closely, a specific room or piece of equipment, for instance, use element is updated. Next, we'll take a look at when triggered manually. Now, the manual trigger is the most intentional of the 6 triggers, I'd have to say. It doesn't watch for anything. It runs when you decide to run it directly from a layer category. From your automations list, you'll see a run button next to any manual automation. So what I mean by this without getting too into the weeds is when trigger manually, if you wanted to set a manual automation to run from room datasheets, you could select any action and then go to your room datasheets category. And when you select an element, whatever automation you select to run, you would come down here, run a manually triggered element with this button here. You would be able to select the automations as you've created them, and it would run the automation. Last one, add a scheduled time. So we'll go back over to automations, create automation, add scheduled time, choose a trigger, add scheduled time. Now with add scheduled time, you've got hour, day, week, month, or you could have a single scheduled time. As an example, we'll fill this one out. Every 6 hours, perhaps starting at a specific date and a specific time, you can choose the action. For this case, we'll just send an email. You will send to recipient. The scheduler shows you a preview of the next 6 scheduled runs, so you can sanity check the timing of these before saving it, and that is shown here. This shows you the next 6 scheduled. Now, one major thing when it comes to time is knowing that the time you set is tied to the time zone of whoever sets up the original automation. So those are all 6 triggers. Element is created, element in category is updated, element is updated, element matches a filter manual, and at a scheduled time. These are the when side, as I mentioned earlier, and in the next video, we're going to get into the what side of automations actions. There are 5 of them. So that's where the actual work gets done following trigger events.